I'm going to show you just how simple it is to get started with the Industrial Internet of Things, the IIoT. Here I have a standard solar panel inverter, goes back through a junction box, back out to the grid. How do we measure, aside from what this tells me and what this tells me, how do we actually measure the output by minute, by hour of my solar panel array back to the electrical company? I can take this and I can easily mount this with a magnet. It has the standard cable here. I can take my current clamps and I can open up the box. I can take these current clamps without ever disconnecting the cables, without ever turning off my solar panel array, and I can put these current clamps right on here easily enough and put those right in there. We wake up the Bluetooth. We download the app, and the app automatically finds the Wzzard, and we open that up and we wait for it to upload the information, and we can see here analog input 1 is reading 0.11 volts. It's actually kind of a cloudy day. Analog input 2, 0.11 volts. The internal temperature, 23.8 degrees C. It's kind of a muggy day, but not all that hot. The battery is just fine at 3.28 volts. That's just to test it here locally. The next step is to find how we can get the information from the Wzzard to the SmartSwarm here. First off, I'll assume that you are able to screw in the antenna there, plug in the power here, and attach an Ethernet cable here. That's pretty simple. And then we give the SmartSwarm some time to capture some data. We have to open up the IP address for the SmartSwarm through a web browser. And up here in the corner, we have the IP address, and it'll take some time to pull up the data here. Once it does, we can go to the dashboard and we can see that it's collecting some data. We're here at about 1 amp here on input 1, 1 amp here on input 2, 1 amp of power. A little bit of fluctuation here. Over the course of the day, this will change. Got some different gauges we can put on there. And then behind it, there's actually some coding where we can make some changes. Pretty simple programming language. We can change the number of messages per minute. We can set up some email, some text. We can change the charts. We can change what data is collected. So we're going to let this run and see what it looks like over the course of the next day. Coming back to the data collection a day later, we can see that overnight nothing was being collected because each analog input is reading 0 amps. So that's typical for solar panels. Then they started to ramp up, and we can actually see that it was a foggy morning because it wasn't a nice even ramp. But here it kind of jumped up, and eventually the fog started to burn off, and here the sun burned through, and then we got the nice curve of a typical solar panel day. Interestingly enough, there's a drop right here before it tapers off for the day, finishing about 10 to 7 at night. Turns out that there is a palm tree casting a shadow on the solar panels. So we can actually calculate the energy loss, the generation loss of the solar panels, which I had no other way of doing with the solar panel array. This is a standard starter kit. It's the most basic of the available starter kits, but includes one intelligent edge node, the Wzzard. And in order to start with this one, open up, The batteries plug in here. Batteries come with it. They're two standard AA size, however they are 3.6 volts, not the standard 1.5 volts of AA's, but they go in just as easily. Put that on there, and that screws in there. We plug in and screw on this antenna here. We screw in this cable here. This cable has the wires for the analog inputs. Those screw into the bottom of these current clamps. It comes with 3 of these current clamps. They're all the same, but that's so that we can measure 3 phases of power. This sends the signal over to the SmartSwarm. This antenna here screws into that there, and then it has a 110 plug adapter that just plugs in right there. Now if you want to add on to this, you can get multiples of these, and those will send the signals right back to the same SmartSwarm. They can put together a wireless mesh, so you can have them spread out over a big area. This right here, the one that this comes with, it's just a Wi-Fi, goes onto a local Wi-Fi network. However, there is a cellular router version of it. The same kit can be purchased with a cell phone router. These current clamps, there are all sorts of different current clamps out on the market that can be purchased for much higher currents, lower currents. So this whole kit can be adapted to much more industrial settings with much higher current over a much broader range.